Alright guys, welcome. Let's do a really slow-paced tutorial for people that are just getting into Nomad Sculpt. So when you open Nomad, it should look something very similar to this. The colors might be different, the background color might be different, but for the most part you should have a sphere, and you see here 98.3K. So that's the size of the sphere. That's actually pretty big, and if you tap here, you can see our sphere. So this is our scene. So any shape or any mesh that we add, it's going to show up here. So for example, there's always a sphere here, but what I do is delete it, and then I add another sphere. And you can see this sphere is only, it might be kind of hard to see, but this sphere is only 6,146. If I add let's add a cylinder, and then you can see it a little bit better. So this sphere is 6,146. The other sphere is way too big, so that's why we deleted it. Okay, so there's these little eyes, so you can tap that and it'll hide the cylinder, but we still have the sphere there. Okay, so let's tap the sphere. So we'll just go back to our scene and we'll tap the sphere, and now we have our sphere. So you may notice that over here on the right, these are where all your tools are going to be. And there's actually not that many tools. You can see that a lot of them are grayed out. If you tap here, then it kind of just extends, but you can only use a few tools here. And that's because every time you add a mesh, so every time you add any one of these 3D shapes, you have to validate it first. So validation is kind of just, don't think too much into it. Essentially, there's some things you can do. If you press here, there's some things you can do to certain shapes before it becomes like an official part of the scene. So, you know, you can change the vertices. So vertices, once you start getting into that talk, it can get kind of confusing. So don't worry too much about it if you're just starting out. But you can go down here to the wireframe. So these are all the shapes that this sphere is made up of, as you can see. And obviously in here, you can change some of these. See how you can make it kind of bigger. It starts to look kind of blocky like that. So you can kind of change some of those things before you bring it into the scene. So that's why you have to validate before you start working. And you can see all of your tools show up now. I'm going to turn the wireframe off because we're not going to worry too much about that for this tutorial. So this right here is a snap cube, and you may see me move it around, and this is so you can easily see which part is the front of your sculpt. So there's the front. If you tap it again, it'll go around to the back, but we want to tap on it. So when I'm 3D sculpting, I like it to look sort of like clay, that sort of clayish color, and I often will even call it clay.
His mama named Clay, I'm gonna call him Clay.
But when you're using white, it's a bit hard to see because of the ambient lights and stuff like that. So let's change this to something that's a little easier to see. Okay, so let's tap this little sun right here, and you have these options come up. And lit PBR, when you're doing your coloring and things like that, then we're gonna switch it back to lit PBR, back to white, and then we're gonna change our colors. But for now, let's go ahead and tap matte cap. And there's a bunch of different matte caps here. A lot of times I either use, and just in case you didn't see that, you just tap on this sphere. So these are kind of ready-made scenes, like not scenes, but like ready-made sort of settings that are just going to disregard like the scene's light. It's only going to focus on whatever this matte cap is. So a lot of time I used to use PNG clay or PXG clay, but I also like to use, where'd it go? I like to use this one. This one is called Naki Clay Red. So I think I'm going to use that for this one. So as you can see, it just looks a little bit more like clay. It's a little bit easier to see. Now the background, if you want to change that, you can just tap on this little picture here, and you can tap on this color, and you can change it to whatever color you like. But I like to use a sort of purplish color. I'm not sure why, but I just kind of like it. I'll make it a little bit, we'll keep it where it was. That looks nice. Okay, so we have our few little shapes, and we pretty much have our scene set up. But the gizmo is another really important tool that you use a lot, so I definitely want to show you that. So that's this apparatus here. And as I move it around, you sort of see that the gizmo sort of moves with it. So the gizmo is sort of like your controller, and that's what you use to move around your 3D object. So we have these arrows, and remember it's 3D, so when you turn it, you see this other arrow. So when I turn it to the right, you know, you see that you would move it back and forth. But if we're looking at it from the front, then you won't see that arrow. So the arrows just move it just like I did. They just move it up and down, left and right, back and forth. Pretty easy. So we have this orange ring, and that's just scale. So that's just the size. Bigger, smaller. So that's all that is. You can use 2 fingers. If you're using an iPad, you can use 2 fingers and you can tap on the screen, and it just is an undo. So it'll just undo whatever you did. I think 3 fingers is redo. Yep. I don't usually use redo, but it's pretty much just like Procreate, which makes it really easy to understand. So now we also have these rings. So you see the blue ring, green ring, red ring, and let's add another shape. So if you remember, we just go here to the scene menu, add, and let's do a torus. So we'll add a torus that's like a ring. Okay, and as you can see, we haven't validated, so we have some other options here. So this is a good example. See, now when we make it bigger, it sort of looks like a donut or a bagel. And a lot of these options we can't do if we validate it. So there's interesting things like that. Let's go ahead and validate it. And now we see the gizmo. So let's move it up and let's shrink it. Okay, so now we have our little donut there. And you can use the red ring to rotate it. And then obviously the mirrors to move it around wherever you want it in space. And then you have these little spheres, and this just stretches it. So that's pretty much the gizmo. It's just your controller. And as you use Nomad Sculpt, you'll slowly get more and more familiar with it. And it's not as complex as it really looks. It's pretty complex, but just give yourself some time. And one thing that I wanted to mention about the rotating and things like that, there's a lot of these tools over here. So you see a line. So if you have a line and you rotate, the gizmo is going to stay exactly aligned with, see this green line here? So it's going to stay exactly aligned with, see this red line and this green line? This will always be up if you have a line on. You know, if you have left, this blue is always going to be pointing the direction of this blue line. So that's what a line does. So it makes it easier if, let's say, you tilt it and you just want to move straight back. And this is something that you'll discover when you run into this issue. Like, let's say you have a line off and you move it and it's moving with your little donut or whatever your shape is, and you're like, I just want to move it straight back, but I have to go like this. You know, like that gets annoying. So all you do is just hit align, and then you can move it straight back. Okay, let's go back to normal. Okay, so, and there's some other things you can play around with too. There is snap. So for example, let's take it off of a line. We'll just leave it normal, but we want to use this snap, and it says 90 degrees. And you can set this to whatever you want. Let's say 45 degrees, which is half of 90. So if you want to tilt it, it just does it at 45 degree increments. Same thing with 90 degree increments. So really useful when you need it. Okay, so let's go ahead and make some sort of character. Just something really simple for those of you who are beginners. So let's tap our scene menu. Let's hit add. And let's do a box. let's go ahead and validate. Oh, and there's one other thing I wanted to show you too, that some of you might be confused about. So if you look at my sphere, it looks very smooth. So some of you might have a sphere that looks more blocky or more pixelated. And all that is smooth shading. So if we go here and then we go down here to smooth shading, some of you might have this off by default. There's a setting actually to set it so that auto is on or auto is off. My auto is on, but if I turn it off, you can see it gets a little more pixelated. You can see these little squares. And same thing with the torus. If I go here and I turn this off, you can see that it's more pixelated. So if yours looks like this, it's just smooth shading. Tap here and you can turn it on or off. I'm going to put mine on auto, which is on. It actually looks like when smooth shading is off, that's what it actually looks like. But smooth shading just makes it appear smoother, which I prefer. Okay, so back to our box. Let's go ahead and hit this scene. And let's go ahead and bring the box back. So we're going to hit the little eye for the box. So let's shrink it. If you remember how to use the gizmo to shrink. So that's this sphere, this little sphere here, and it's not working. Very odd. Huh. Let's see why it doesn't work. Oh, and that's a good learning lesson. The way that it doesn't work, it looks like the gizmo is set to the square, but I have to tap it. Now it's actually on the square, because before it was on the sphere. So let's go to the box, and now let's shrink it. And as you can see, even I make silly mistakes all the time. So I'll make it a little bit bigger, and I'll shrink it a little bit more. And let's go to the front. So let's find this little snap cube and just hit front. That way we can work from the front of the model. See this red line here? And if you don't see the grid or anything like that, the grid is right here. So if the grid isn't on, then you can adjust it here. And also go to your camera and just make sure it's in orthographic. If it's in perspective, you might not see it as well. So we want to make sure that we're in orthographic. That way things aren't distorted, because when you use perspective, something farther away will look smaller. And when you're sculpting, that can be a little distracting. Okay, so we'll hit front. And what I want to do is bring this box, I want to line it up with this red line, just like that. So that'll be our ground. So let's go to our scene and let's go to the box, name, and we'll just I'll put FLR for floor. And we'll hit front. Okay, so let's go back into our scene and let's find that circle. I don't know what I did with it actually, the sphere. So if we go to it, so I think what I did is made it really small. Oh, I don't know what I did to it. Look at that. I made it into a disc. So I'm just going to delete it, add a new sphere. And if your sphere is fine, you don't have to delete it. I just had to do that because I messed my sphere up. So if you notice, I haven't validated. Whoops. I haven't validated, so sometimes you can sort of forget what's happening and wonder why it's not working. But you can use the gizmo here. There's a gizmo here. It's a little hidden before you validate. But if it's just a sphere, let's just go ahead and validate. And we'll shrink it. Let's move it up some. So this will be the body of our character. I'm going to tap grid because I don't really like the grid. But now we have this floor here, so we don't need the grid anymore. So let's take this torus and let's just move it up for now. I don't know what I want to do with it, but maybe we'll use it. I'll shrink it a little bit. and move it out of the way. So let's go to our sphere and let's just rename this body. So we'll tap these three dots, name, body. Okay, looks good. So we have torus, body, and floor. We also have a cylinder. So let's go ahead and unhide our cylinder, or if you don't find it or forgot to delete it, just add a new cylinder. It's okay. So we haven't validated. And again, before you validate, you can play with some of these options. You can make sort of a cone. You can make other shapes like that. If you want it to have a hole, you can make a hole. If you want it to go back to normal, just tap it twice to go back to disengage the hole part. Okay, I'm just going to undo. So it's a regular cylinder again. That's all we need. And let's go ahead and hit validate. So we'll go into our scene. It's already selected with the gizmo. Let's go ahead and shrink it. So we're going to use this big orange ring and shrink it. And let's stretch it. So we'll just use this little green node and we'll stretch it. Let's move it over and up. And we'll just make a sort of leg type shape, something like this. I think that looks pretty good. So let's give the leg a little bit of a bend. So let's hit left. So we're looking at the side. Let's use move. So move is a great tool. I'm going to make it really big. I'm going to make the radius around 300. So you can see the radius here. And essentially, I just want to move. I just want to push the back of the leg just to give it a little bend. So we just kind of push. And you can pull as well. So we'll push it. We'll push it real good. And now he has like a little bend in his leg. So I'm going to hit left again. Make sure I have the leg selected. I'll hit gizmo. And I just want to move it back some. Okay, so now we have one leg. But it would be great if we can mirror this leg to the other side, which we can do. So we'll just tap our scene. So we have our cylinder. Let's rename it leg so we don't get confused. So we'll tap these three dots, name, leg. Okay, so now we have a leg. So let's add a mirror. And now we have it mirrored on the other side. Okay, so now we have our two little legs. I'm going to turn it to the side again. And let's figure out how we want the body shape to be. So we can use move again. Make it a little bit smaller, the radius. And let's just make sure we tap on the body and we can just pull this up a bit. And maybe we want to push it back and give him like a little bit of an S. You can look at it from the front and just kind of see how the shape is looking. Maybe we want him to be a little bit wider down here. Okay, so very easy, easy peasy. Now maybe we want to give him some buns. So let's go to our scene, add, sphere. Okay, so let's use our gizmo. Let's validate it first. We'll tap on the gizmo. We'll move it up. Move it back. Now let's shrink it with this big orange ring. And then we'll move it forward again. And we'll move it over. So of course this is 1/2 again, but we can do the mirror option. So we'll go to our scene with the sphere. You can add a mirror, and now the buns are mirrored. So you can tap on one of the buns and then you can adjust it, and it will adjust the other one because they're in a mirror together. So there's only one sphere in the mirror. This one they're mirror images of each other. So if we move this one out, this one's going to move the opposite, just like a mirror. So let's give him some buns. So we'll just move them in, something like that. We don't want him to have too much cakes, but I think something like that is nice. You can get a little creative, and you can stretch it a little bit. Give them a little bit of a wide load. You know, whatever you're feeling. And you can actually tap on one of the buns, and you can use move as well. So you can adjust the buns to make them exactly like you want it. So I think those are pretty good cakes. All right, so let's see, what else do we want to make? So let's give him a head. Actually, first let's save. So I'm going to tap this folder and then hit save. And we'll let's name this, we'll just name it, what is it, July 2nd? So I'll just put July 2 for now. And we'll change the name later. Let's add a sphere, and this will be the head, so we'll use our gizmo. We can go ahead and validate it. And if we want, we can actually rename it so we don't get confused. So we tap these 3 dots, name, and head. Okay, so now we'll just use our gizmo, we'll move it up. And I don't know how big we want this head to be, but we can make it as big or as small as we want. Maybe we want to put it forward on the body. Maybe it has no neck. You know, this is like where you can get really creative with these characters. But maybe we'll give them a neck. And this is an area where feel free to be very creative. You know, like you can, so I'm using the move tool, and as long as you're on the head, you can change the shape of the head. So just kind of move your canvas around and just experiment with how you want the head to look. I think something like that is interesting. Maybe I'll move it up a little bit more and forward. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. So we have this torus here. Maybe we'll use that as some sort of yeah, we'll use it as something like this on top of the body. We'll make it a little bit bigger and see how it just doesn't feel right. So I'm going to go ahead and use this sphere and just kind of squish it this way. I think that feels a bit better. Okay, so let's add another cylinder for the neck. So we'll go to the scene menu, add cylinder. So now we have this big cylinder, and we can use these to adjust it. Let's take the middle one and let's just make the whole thing thinner. Let's switch to the gizmo. So just tap here, we'll switch to the gizmo and move it up. We'll shrink it until it's kind of like a neck. We'll shrink it a little bit more. So we'll just move it so it's sort of inside that little thingy. But we haven't validated. So let's say, for example, let's tap on this little cylinder here that goes back to the cylinder options. And this can be useful. So let's say we just want to stretch this part up. We want to stretch this part up. Right? And now we can, let's say we want to make this side bigger and this side smaller. So that's when that can be really, really useful. So we like that. We'll go ahead and validate. Let's rename so we don't get confused. So cylinder, 3 dots, name, neck. Okay, now he's got a neck. So I just want to look at the head and just see what I think about the placement of the head. I might just adjust mine a little bit. I think I'm going to make his head a little wider. Maybe a little further down on the neck. I think that looks okay. So now for the arms, let's use a different tool. Let's use the tube tool. So we tap on the tube tool, you see the options here. So let's go ahead and hit path. B-spline is fine. We don't need the other two options. So let's just say we want to do his arms bent a little bit forward. So first we'll just put our, touch the screen and then drag out. Okay, and then when you lift off, you can adjust these two nodes. But you don't want to rotate because you can see it won't really move what we made. So you want to tap this little green thing here. So let's just say this is the arm and we want to put a bend in it. So right now you can move the ends of these, but if we want to bend it, we just need to add more nodes by tapping on the path like this. So you'll have to maneuver your canvas around to kind of get the arms where you want them to be. So let's say we want them something like this. And you can add as many nodes as you need. Let's say we just want to add another node so we can make sure that this part is nice and bent inside the body, like so. Let's move this node down a little bit. Whoop. If it goes black, then it's like an angle. But let's keep it a curve for now. Let's bring this a little bit closer to the body. So that looks pretty good. And cool thing about the tube tool is, and you can do this with the other shapes as well, before you validate, you can mirror, so it's the same as adding a mirror, except it's not going to be validated. So we'll just hit the mirror here, and you'll notice if I go in my scene, we just have mirror and tube. So it's very good. Let's go to the mirror, tap these three dots, name, and let's name that arms. You can name the tube arms as well. Okay, I'm going to save. I don't have my autosave on, so I have to save manually. So this looks good. Let's make them a little bit bigger. See this little orange sphere? So this will adjust the size of the arms. And radius, if you tap once, you can make this side smaller, this side bigger, or vice versa. And if you tap it again and you see all three, then you can adjust all three of these to where you like it. I think I like that. I think that looks good. I think the body's a little plump. I'm going to tap on the body and use move. And I just feel like the body is a little too plump. So see how I just adjust? I can just easily adjust it with move. Make it a little bit smaller if I need. Okay. I think that feels a bit better. So we go back to the arms. When we like them, let's go ahead and validate them. Okay, so now the arms are validated. They're still in the mirror, but now the arms are validated. So let's just give him some feet. And this will be really easy. Let's just go to the legs. So we'll go to the mirror and the leg. I want to name the mirror legs actually as well. Okay. So let's add a sphere. Notice that it automatically goes into the group with the legs, but you can take it out. Just long press and just drag it down, and then it'll be by itself. So I'm going to rename this feet. Okay, so let's go to our gizmo, and notice I haven't validated yet. We'll hit front. I'm going to shrink it. I'll move it over. Let's rotate the body. Let's move the sphere towards the front. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger with the orange ring. I'm going to kind of smush it together with this green little sphere here. So we'll kind of smush it together. Let's look at it from the front again. See, it's pretty wide, so I'm going to squish it this way with this sphere. So you kind of see where I'm going with it. And I want the front to be, whoops, I want the front to be round. So I can't use the move tool because I haven't validated yet. So he's going to have 2 of these, so I might as well just mirror it now and then hit validate. So just make sure you have one of the feet selected. You can use move. So now let's just adjust the foot so that it's just more round on the front. So I'm just going to use move and just adjust it a little bit so it's a little bit round on the front. You can kind of squish it a little bit closer in the back, maybe. So something like this. So now he has some little feet. Let's take the gizmo and adjust it if you need. You can make them a little bit flatter if you want. You can sort of give them a little tilt one way or the other if you want. But I think this looks pretty good. Okay, so let's go ahead and trim the bottom, because obviously the sphere is going beyond this little square. See, if I hide this, if I hide the floor, you see that the sphere goes beneath. So make sure you're on the foot. Let's go to trim, and we're going to use this rectangle. And what you do is you just make a rectangle. Whatever's in the white will get deleted. It's not going to delete this because we have the sphere selected. So whatever you have selected, if I have the buns selected, it's not going to cut anything else. It would only cut the buns. So we want to tap the foot. We want to make our square. We don't want to go right up to the edge. We want to give it a little bit of space, tiny little bit of space. Okay. So now we've trimmed that, and as you can see, it's trimmed. I'm just hitting solo down here. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so let's see, what else do we want to do with this character? Let's give him some eyes. So we'll add, and we'll do sphere. We'll use gizmo. We'll move it up and then forward. Maybe we'll shrink it. And we'll go ahead and hit mirror. So now it's mirrored, so when we move it left or right, then you'll see the other one. Bring it down. Maybe we'll make them a little bit smaller. And maybe it'll be fun to sort of flatten them a little bit and then pull them out. Maybe flatten them a little bit. Okay, kind of like this. Now, if you want to make like a little bit more of the kawaii type eyes, you can always go like this. You can always squeeze them down. You can validate, and then you can use move, and you can just move these around. It'll give you some cool little shapes. Things like that. Ooh, I like that. And that was by accident. I'm gonna hit solo so you can see what we did to the sphere. So obviously you can make any type of eyes. This is another point where you can really be creative with it and make it your own. But I really like that. So an easy way to make a mouth, we'll use mask. So just find mask. Make sure you have the head selected. And now with the mask, you can draw a mask on this. But you can see that it's very pixelated. And that's because it's not dense enough. So we need a more dense sphere to get this clear. Same thing with paint. If whatever the mesh is not dense enough, meaning this number is too small, then it's not going to look clear. So let's just undo. And there's 2 ways to do it. You can voxel remesh, which sort of recalculates all the shapes, and you can add higher resolution that way. And you can also subdivide. Subdivide is just kind of taking the shapes that are already there, and it kind of just splits them like, so if you have one square, it'll split it into 4 squares. So it's creating density by kind of splitting the shapes that are already there. So there's 2 ways to do it. Voxel remesh, I'll show you the first way. So we'll go here, voxel, and you see here voxel remeshing. And all you would do is move this resolution up or down. You can see when the squares are big, that means it's not dense. So the denser the squares, the more detail you can add. So we'll bring it up to like 160 and hit remesh. That's okay. And now this sphere is 90.3. And if we use the mask, it's more clear. So let's go back. I'll show you the other way. It's kind of in the same spot, except right next to it, multi-res, subdivide. Okay, so now it's 24.5. It might be kind of clear, still a little bit. Let's say we go back into there and we subdivide again. Now it's 98, so now it is going to be pretty clear. So there's 2 ways to make it more dense. And we might as well just keep it here. So I'll use the mask. And where do we want the mouth to be? Maybe we want the mouth here. Or maybe we want it here. I kind of like that. But I want to give the face a little bit of shape. So we have this masked off. So anything we do, it's not going to affect this masked off area. That's what mask is. So there's select mask, and this just allows you to use the lasso or the rectangle. It's the same thing, it just kind of does it in a shape. The reason why it's on both sides is, again, because we have symmetry. If I turn that off, then it's only going to do one side. But with symmetry, then it just makes it symmetrical. It's sort of like mirror, only not. Anyway, we'll keep symmetry on for now. We'll go back to regular mask, and let's use clay. So we have clay. We can add a little clay here. Easy peasy, we add a little clay. It just kind of gives the mouth a little bit of shape, maybe even underneath as well. Sort of like a little chin sort of situation. Something like that, just a little bit of space. So we'll go back to the mask. We'll invert. So now everything is masked except for the mouth area that we drew in. So now we use the gizmo, and nothing can move except the part that isn't masked. So you can move this in, and you can see now that there's an opening where the mouth is. And just in case it kind of bugs you because we can't move it straight back, which is kind of annoying, there is ways to move it straight back. You can hit a line, and then you can move it straight back. And you can also adjust the pivot. So let's say you wanted to adjust this manually. Let's say you wanted to move it kind of up in this direction. You can hit pivot. So the pivot just affects the very center of the gizmo. And then you can take like the ring and you can adjust it. So let's say you wanted it to go kind of up a little bit. You just hit pivot again. And now the pivot is where you've set it. Okay, so I'm going to hit undo because we don't really need that. Whoops. So I just undo back to the part where we have the mouth unmasked. And I want it to go straight back, so I'm going to hit align. I'll tilt it so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll just move the mouth in, maybe even a little bit wider in the back. Something like that, maybe even a little bit bigger. Why not? Just have fun with it. So now there's an opening for the mouth. So we'll go to the mask, clear it, and now we have this new shape. Let's deal with these eyes. So let's tap on the eye, trim again, and rectangle will kind of be hard to use because of the shape. So looking at this, let's use the lasso. The lasso is kind of just like a free hand. So let's say we want to cut all of this. It cuts both, And now the eye is not coming out of the mouth because that's weird. Okay, so this looks really bad. We're going to smooth it soon, but first let's figure out if there's any other parts we want to be connected to the head. So I think we want to connect the neck. I'm going to put a little bend in the neck with move. I think I want a little bit of a bend. So something like that. Okay, he's looking pretty good. Let's give him some fingers. So let's take the arms. We're going to need to make them more dense as well. So let's tap on our scene. We have the arms here. So let's go ahead and we'll tap here, multi-res. We'll subdivide it once, twice. I think that should be okay. So let's use smooth. And let's just smooth out the end a little bit. There you go, looks good. So now let's use inflate, and we're going to use inflate to add some fingers. Okay, so we're in a mirror, so we don't need symmetry. Radius is about 120, intensities at 50. Okay, so for inflate, you can see how I add that. It kind of inflates. I let go and then I add some more, and it kind of makes a nice little round sort of finger. I'll do the same thing here. So I just go nice in a circle pattern, let off, then continue kind of in the same spot, like so. And we'll do it once more. I'm going to hit solo so the floor is out of the way, so we're just seeing the finger. Maybe we'll add another one here. Looks pretty good. Maybe we want it to be a little bit longer. You can do something like that. Okay, we'll hit solo again. And now let's use drag. Drag is great. If you want to, let's make it a little bit bigger, the intensity. Drag is great because unlike move, drag is kind of trying to move things in a particular spot. It's not trying to take everything around it. Move is great for bigger, swooping kind of movements that are stayed smooth. Drag is great if, let's say, we want to move some of these little fingers, then we can just kind of press on them and kind of figure out how we want them to be. I'm going to take these fingers and I'm just going to flatten them out a bit. So I'll just kind of push on them and just kind of flatten them out. So we have something like that. So now that we did all these adjustments to the arm, it's always good to sort of recalculate the mesh. And let's do a voxel remesh, because if you don't do that, it's not going to look very smooth. And we want to make sure everything is smooth. So we'll go here. Whoops. Notice that I tapped that. You want to make sure you're on the arm. So we'll go here, voxel, and let's remesh it around 165. Okay. And now we can take smooth and we'll just kind of smooth these out very softly. We'll just smooth out those fingers. Okay, so I think everything is looking great. Yeah, I think it looks good. So we can start by adding some of these things together. So maybe we want to make this whole thing like a suit, and maybe we want let's see. Maybe we want to have the body and the legs together. So let's voxel remesh the body. So we'll go to our scene. We have the body here. We have the legs. So we'll select those. And for now, let's voxel remesh those together. So we go here, voxel, and we can remesh them together. And let's do it around like 175. Okay, remesh. So now they're all one piece, as you can see. So you can take smooth and you can just smooth out. Make sure you have symmetry on. Oh, we forgot the tuchus. How How can we forget that? So now we have leg, which is the body, and then we have the buns. Oh, here's the buns. So we'll just tap on the mirror and let's just hit validate, join children, yes. So we have the buns and the leg, ooh, and the feet. We can grab the feet as well. And we'll voxel remesh all of those together. So we'll remesh, let's move it to about 200 and remesh, and now it's all one piece. So let's take smooth and then smoothly smooth out the buns. We want to keep that defined little crevice. One of my YouTube comments, or one of the comments somewhere, was talking about my character's little tuchus. So I figured for this one, I'll make sure to leave the crackle in place. Okay, you notice we lost a little bit on the feet. See how the feet are a little off, so I'm going to take trim with rectangle, and I'm just going to make that one nice clean line like that. Smooth it a little bit even. It's a little bit better, at least. Ugh. I don't know why it looks so terrible. Trim it again. Just want to trim it nice and even. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to do another trick. So I want to add a little more heel to this. So we can use select mask. We can use this rectangle here. So we'll just draw this rectangle, and we want to leave it right above that area. Okay, so see how we have this little bit left? That's what we want. So let's go ahead and now let's mask off everything else. So all the rest of the body. And now we can use the gizmo and we can pull this part down. Okay, so now I'm just gonna take select mask and I'm gonna clear it. I'm gonna hide the floor so you can kind of see what's happening. So now we have this. So this is great. So let's voxel remesh this around 200. And then let's smooth out these feet. So that looks way better. His feet have a little more space. They look way better. That's one of the great things about voxel remeshing. And one thing I really like to do once I have this is I like to make boots. So I'm gonna use split rectangle. So I'm just gonna split this maybe around here. Okay, so it looks good. So now I'm gonna take this, and this mesh one is now the boots. So I'm gonna take this, rename it boots. I'm gonna voxel remesh it around 200. So that'll make it nice and solid. You can smooth out the top a little bit. Okay. And now I'm gonna do a little trick. I'm gonna clone the boots. So I tap these three dots and hit clone. And now for these boots, I'm gonna take trim, rectangle, and I'm gonna trim the top. So I'm gonna trim it like so. And then use the gizmo and I'll move this down. So now we have kind of like a sole. So I'm gonna voxel remesh this around 180 or so. It's fine. Smooth. And we'll go ahead and just smooth this out. I don't know why it's this weird color. If that ever happens, it might be that when you used one of the tools, it kind of colored it this color here. I'm just gonna go back up to white and hit paint all just to get rid of it. But you don't have to worry about that if that happens. So I hit gizmo. I'll make sure I'm on these, the sole part. If the gizmo is off, just hit pivot, center, pivot. I'm gonna make them a little bit bigger and I'll move them up. has proper boots. You can see they're a little off. So when this happens, all I do is take trim. I trim one of them. Whoops. Let's turn off symmetry. So you trim one of the boots. You take your other boot and you move it exactly where you want it. Okay, so now that's pretty perfect. And then you go to your scene and you can add this as a mirror, add mirror, and then you have two of the same. Okay, I gotta make the boot part bigger though. So let's take both of these, the gizmo, and make the boots a little bit bigger. And I think I might have to do the same thing with the boots. I'll just take trim. Oops. Turn symmetry off, trim one side, and then take the boots and the sole, move it over. Let's find a good spot for them. And now I'll take the boots, the mesh, which is actually boots. So now we'll take the boots and we'll add a mirror. So now the boots are correctly where they should be. Nice. Okay. His head is still kind of weird to me. I'm going to take the head and the eyes. I'm going to make them bigger. Move them back to the middle, just make them big. I kind of don't mind that. So I don't know what I want to do with the head, but I know that I want to voxel remesh the head and the neck. So let's do that. Let's take the head and the neck and let's voxel remesh them together. I'm going to use this little shortcut, but it's the same as the voxel remesh up here. And I'm going to voxel remesh them together at like 175. So we'll remesh. Okay. And now I'm going to use smooth. I'm just going to smooth out that head area, the mouth area that we created. So we'll smooth that out. I want to smooth out around the neck as well. And now I have to adjust the mouth. So I'm going to use drag for that. Drag is a little bit better because you have a little bit more control. So I'm going to bring the mouth down a little bit. And I want to try to make the corners of the mouth a little bit sharper. I like that. And drag is the perfect tool for that because it really gives you more detail when you're trying to move. Whereas the actual move tool is better for just keeping everything smooth. I'm going to try to make the nose a little more round. So I'm just going to use move and just kind of pull out a little bit just to make it a little more smooth. And you can also do other fun things like use the flatten tool and you can sort of flatten the underside. So you can use different things like that to kind of give your character a certain look. I also want to experiment with not having this sort of dip in the middle. So I'll just use move and just kind of push that part down a little bit. I think I like it better without that part. Okay, I'm going to experiment a little bit with the eyes. Make sure they're somewhere, make sure they're exactly how I want them. That's even more wild than before. But I kind of like it. He kind of looks like a dolphin or something. I kind of like that idea of like a dolphin, so I'm going to add a sphere, use gizmo, and we'll move it up and back. And then I'm going to use the red sphere to kind of make it into a, whatchamacallit. We'll shrink it. And I'm going to validate it and then use move to kind of mesh it into a sphere, sculpt it into a sphere, as you will, if you will. So we'll just kind of move this part up. It's kind of interesting. I kind of like it. I kind of love it. So I'm going to rename this fin. And we can also clone, so we can just hit clone. Now we have fin 1. And I'll use the gizmo, and maybe we'll just make a second smaller one. So we'll just move it down, we'll rotate it, shrink it. Ooh, I noticed that it is not straight, so I must have, at some point in time, moved it the wrong way. There we go. That happens sometimes. So we'll just rotate it. And this is one of those times where I just want to use a line so I can move it straight out. It's kind of cool to have it like that. Let's clone it again. And we'll move it down and over, and maybe we'll shrink it. Take it off of a line. No, that doesn't make it easier. We'll put it back on a line. And we'll put one here as well. It's a little bit weird, but it's interesting. I like it. So I'm also seeing part of the fin in the head. So if I hit X-ray, you can only see the part that you have selected. So I'm going to use trim and lasso and just get rid of all of this. We don't need it. So I get rid of all of that. You can even go to these other shapes and you can do the same thing. You can tap on them and you can get rid of all that extra that we don't need. So we take it off X-ray, it looks the same, but it's just cleaned up a little bit. So I always add these little pieces called eye dots. I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. It looks a little... I always call them eye dots, and they're just little spheres. So we'll just add a new sphere. We'll use our gizmo, we'll move it up and shrink with the orange ring. Shrink, shrink, shrink. We'll move it in and we'll hit mirror. So then we have 2 of them. Shrink, shrink, shrink. I always have this on my little characters. I'm going to validate and then use drag really small. And I'll just kind of drag these. Just to give me a nice little detail there. This is kind of big, so I'm just going to shrink them and move them a little bit out. But yeah, just to give a little bit of something. I want to make sure it's right on the surface. I love that little detail. I always add it to my characters. I think that looks great. Okay, so I like the arms, but I don't want to voxel remesh them together with the body. I could just leave them like this. I could just take move and just kind of make sure that they're tucked in nicely. I actually think that looks fine as well. But here's another option that you can do if you want. You can add a sphere. I'm just going to go to the top here, add a sphere. We use our gizmo, move it up, shrink. You can go ahead and hit mirror, and then move it to the left and right. Shrink it a little bit more. Kind of move it back a little bit. And I want to just kind of squish it together. Make sure you don't have a line on. You don't need a line anymore. And then I'm going to rotate it. I'll use this little middle piece. So I just kind of want to nestle it into the top, almost like it's part of this. So we nestle that in. I'm going to go ahead and hit validate. And then it just kind of looks like a piece of the, of the top. And I like the arms not connected. And there's another thing you can do as well. We can take this sphere and we can clone it. Actually, I have a better idea. Instead of doing that, take the mirror in the sphere and clone it. So now this mirror, let's go ahead and rename that shoulder, maybe shoulder A. Let's take this mirror and rename it shoulder B. Okay, so now we'll take this sphere and the gizmo and we can move it off, maybe shrink it. And now we have like that nice little second layer. I'm going to shrink this a little bit more. Just kind of adjust it so it's right around that arm. Like so. Let's take a look. And it just gives you that second little pop of detail that I like. And you can also Vox remesh these two together. Let's see how that looks. So we have the mesh split, which is actually the body. Sometimes they change when you trim and stuff like that. And then we have these two little pieces. So this is shoulder A. I'm going to go ahead and validate that whole thing. So now we have shoulder A and we have the body. And let's see what it looks like if we Vox remesh them together around, we'll do like 189 or so. Take smooth and just kind of smooth this a little bit. Kind of smooth that back here a little bit. And it's kind of nice. It just looks like part of the suit. And for extra credit, you can use inflate, and we'll make the radius kind of small. And you can add in these little inflated pieces that will really just make it look, smooth it out a little bit, just really make it look realistic. We'll add a crease in there. Kind of smooth it out a little bit more. And you can turn off symmetry and use inflate, and that will give you, I don't know why I said inflate like that. And you can add some extra little details that don't have to always match the other side. Make it a little bit bigger. It doesn't have to be, not everything has to be symmetrical. You can even add some in up here. Different details like that. Maybe we'll add some over the tuchus. Just add some nice little inflates. And around the edge, the ends of them, I usually just kind of smooth it out. It just makes them look a little bit more natural. Now it kind of looks like a suit, You can take clay and you can go around like maybe this little section here. You can make it a little bit smaller and just add some little details. And again, just softly kind of smooth it out. Just make it look nice and natural. Maybe add some down by where the suit goes into the boots. I love adding little details like this. I'll add some more little details back there, and then I'll just kind of smooth everything, make it look nice. And you can actually add crease as well. Crease is really great at giving you some of these nice details. Okay, looks good. I'm going to take the arms and I'm going to use clay and give him some shoulders. I'm going to go ahead and hit symmetry and just make the clay tool a little bit bigger and maybe give him a little elbow, some elbow love. I like it. I feel like he needs something on the front of his little suit. I think that would be cute. Sometimes it's fun to add a little more details to the suit. So we made the little wrinkles and things like that. But let's use crease. And I think I want to do a pattern like maybe going around under the armpits. And maybe this continues. You can hit solo if that helps. Maybe this continues up here. Just goes across. Hit solo again. That looks decent. And maybe we have one that cuts across here. And it's always fun to kind of experiment and see what you like. I'll hit solo again. Maybe this one comes up a little higher. Like so. It looks decent. But there's a ton of different ways you can do that. You can always do something a little bit more different. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of like it. It kind of feels a little more fishy. I thought I wouldn't like it, but it does look a bit more fishy. So what if I add another one here? Okay, nice. Let's hit solo and see how it looks. I kind of like it. Another little interesting trick that I like to do is use pinch. So I don't feel like this is sharp enough, so I'll use pinch, small radius, and just kind of pinch that edge, and it'll give us a nice sharp edge. Make sure you have symmetry on so it's doing both sides. Okay, that looks nice. You might be able to get away with the other one as well. See if we can clean up the back a little bit. I wonder if I can smooth right underneath. Okay, looks nice. And also you can use crease and invert to make some interesting shapes too. Let's say we wanted to do something like this for his little trousers, maybe for the back as well. So kind of interesting. I like it. Okay. So honestly, I'm pretty happy with this little character. We didn't do much with the Taurus, but I don't think we have to. Maybe I'll just adjust it a little bit. Suit looks pretty good. I like it. Boots look pretty good. Yeah, I like it. So I think this is good for now. I'll do a video where I kind of color him in, but it's a good chance for you to color him in and figure out what you want to do. And of course, to move forward from here, just switch from matte cap to lit PBR, and then you can tap on each part, and then you tap here, and then you can adjust the colors. And then whenever you have the color that you like, you just hit paint all. And just remember that you can adjust make it really shiny by turning roughness down, or turn roughness up to stop all that hard glare. Different things like that. But I think that's a good place for now. I'm gonna undo and go back to matte cap, and I'll do another video so I'll show you how I color him in, and maybe we'll do some lighting as well. And do a turntable, tap here, 3 little dots, and you can do a little turntable. Oh, and I guess I should show you, if you want to export it, you can just tap this little folder, go to render, and then you can render it here. If you don't want to see the background, you can just check that, and then you can export PNG, and it exports like this. All right, keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to go more in depth, then definitely check out my Skillshare classes where I am a top teacher. I have about 50 classes, both Procreate and Nomad Sculpt. I also have a few classes on Udemy, so if you want to learn more, or you just like my style, you like the way I teach, you want to support me, those are some other places that you can do it. Thanks again, keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video.